healthy building and maintaining healthy partnerships and collaborations. As a reminder, please put any questions you may have in the Q&A section. If you're answering a question I asked, or you just want to make some comment, you can use the chat button. The reason why we want you to use the Q&A is we don't want to miss all those amazing questions that you may have. We want to make sure we're answering as many questions as possible during the time we have together. So I am a licensed nonprofit consultant with Grow Charity Events. Grow Charity Events supports BIPOC-led and BIPOC-serving nonprofit organizations, and we do that in several ways: through event planning, organizational and program development, racial equity and inclusion training, professional development, and wellness workshops, which is part of what we're doing here today. And why is all this important? Why do we do what we do? Our main focus is on decreasing the impact of trauma and dismantling systemic racism that exists within philanthropy and the nonprofit sector. On May 14th, we'll be having our annual conference, and we're inviting you to attend. At the end of this presentation, there will be a link to our website, information about how to contact us, but also our website. And you can go there and get information for this conference. It is specifically curated for Black leaders, BIPOC leaders in the nonprofit sector. It is local, our organization is local to Baltimore. So the organization has roots in Baltimore and is very committed to working with organizations in the larger Baltimore community. All right, so what should you get out of today? What am I hoping that you learned today? One, to identify the characteristics of healthy collaboration or partnership, the benefits of a collaboration or partnership, best practices for executing a collaboration or partnership, and then we're going to talk about a list of who can be potential partners and collaborators. So what is a collaboration? There is actually a difference between a collaboration and a partnership. And sometimes folks use the words interchangeably, but they are different. And they can be used together. You can have a collaboration without a partnership. You can have a partnership without a collaboration, or you can have a collaboration and a partnership, right? So collaboration is the action of working with someone to produce or create something, right? So if you're working, if you're a nonprofit organization and you are working with another organization or a group of people from the community to create a particular curriculum, or you're working with a group of people, collaborating with a group of community members or community organizations to form a committee to address a particular issue, a particular concern that the community may have, right? And so collaboration does have outcome, but it's really focused on producing or creating something. A partnership, on the other hand, is mostly used in the terms of business. So when you are partnering, it's a relationship between two or more people, or it could be organizations, and it's mostly concerned with trade or business. So you may have a partnership in writing this particular grant, right, for BC, the Grassroots Fund. You may have a partnership with another organization, and you're going to partner to write the grant so you can get funds. You can also partner with a local business. So you may have a business that the community use frequently, and you want this business to be vested in your organization. So you might approach them about a partnership. And a partnership may look like, for example, you have a youth mentoring program, and you may not have adequate space for mentors and mentees to meet. So there's a local cafe, a local coffee shop, a local space that you think will be a great place for mentees and mentors to use. So you approach them about a partnership. We're sending you business potentially, because when the mentees or mentors come to the coffee shop, they may get a cup of hot cocoa, they may get a cup of tea, they may order a snack. And then you ask the business, because it's a partnership, to donate 15% of whatever is spent by your mentees and mentors back into the program, right? So it's a partnership that you have, and a partnership that you're both invested in as a way to provide a space for mentees and mentors to get together in a community, because you want it to be accessible, right? When you have a mentee and mentor program, you want it to definitely be accessible, specifically to the mentees, because lots of times mentors will travel right across the city to mentor in particular communities, but you definitely want to make it accessible to the mentees. And so that would be a partnership. You are sending this business, and the business is making a contribution to your particular program. All right, so what are the benefits of a collaboration or a partnership? They both have same types of benefits. It extends your reach. So let's just go back to the example of the coffee shop, right? So if you have a partnership with a particular coffee shop, that may open opportunities for you to have your organization's information in the coffee shop that can be seen by all the coffee shop customers, right? So it extends your reach. It might help with recruiting new mentors. It might help by getting your messaging out. It might also include your donor base or your volunteer base, because you've now extended your reach. In the same vein, it increases visibility. So let's go back to the first example I used with the collaboration, where you are gathering community members together to form a specific committee that you're going to work together to address a particular need or issue in the community. So let's say we need to make sure our sidewalks, our lawns, our properties are clean, right? So you collaborate with homeowners, with business owners, with high schools, and perhaps once a month or twice a month, the committee comes together, you gather volunteers, and you walk the radius of whatever the community boundaries are, and you are picking up trash from the gutters, you are picking up trash from lawns, from in front of businesses to help keep the community clean, right? Because perhaps unclean streets, yards can be an eyesore, right? It really doesn't give a really good look for the community, but it also attracts vermin, rodents, and other types of little creatures that we don't really want in our community, and that can spread disease and other things, right? And so there's no monetary benefit. You're not in a business relationship with the folks who are on this cleaning project, but you're collaborating because you have the same interest, the same vested interest in making your community beautiful, in making your community a place where people feel like, yes, I want to live. When I come home, I'm so happy when I reach my block, because look at these nice, clean streets and sidewalks, the lawns are mowed. And we're working together as a community. We feel like we're a family because neighbors care about each other. It doesn't matter that it's my yard, right? We know that we are a community. So I hope you can see the difference there in those two examples about a collaboration and a partnership. All right, increases visibility goes along with extends reach and new audiences. You have an opportunity to reach folks that you may not have been able to reach if you had not partnered or collaborated. Those folks, the new audiences that you're meeting, they have their own networks. And so you now get access to those networks through the new audiences. You can reach more financial goals. It is a fact that organizations who partner to write a grant get more funding. And they are most likely, especially in times when funding is very limited, funders are looking for grants where there's a community partnership, where the organization who is applying for the grant clearly shows in their grant application how they are partnering with other community stakeholders, whether those be businesses, other nonprofits, community leaders, churches, schools, etc. But that can help to share the cost, right? So it's not just you sharing the cost, whatever the cost may be for running a particular program, but you can also apply for more grant money, right? So it helps everyone involved reach their financial goals. It builds business relationships. So even if you are collaborating with a business, because sometimes collaborating with a business isn't really a partnership, you might not be getting a per se financial or business benefit from it, but what you may be getting from this business is extended reach, increased visibility, and access to new audiences. You may also be saving on your budget with a particular business who may give you space to have your meetings, right? So sometimes you can collaborate with a business and there's no financial benefit for you as the organization, but you're getting something else in return. That helps to build relationships with businesses. One, you're bringing them new clients or new customers. Two, they're learning about the work that you do, and many times we'll get involved and we'll donate and we'll make a contribution. You may also learn new skills, right? When you collaborate with a team of people, you don't have to know everything or be able to do everything. That's a whole part of building a team. But you can certainly learn new skills, especially if it's a new project that's being launched, or it may be a program or an initiative that has existed since years, decades, that you're now getting a new look. You're now bringing it into the 21st century. So the opportunity to learn new skills. We have gone very virtual. If nothing else has come out of COVID, it's the necessity for our community to have access to technology, to be able to work technology and maneuver it. So that can be a new skill that you are learning, or that's being taught, or that's being gained through these collaborations or these partnerships. Access to technology, understanding how technology works. Social media, learning about the ins and outs of social media. Social media is an amazing tool that is so underused by nonprofits, and it's really underused by BIPOC nonprofits because of the lack of education or knowledge around how to use social media or even technology. So we do need to get much better in that particular area. More resources and manpower. It increases your network for the long term. So a partnership or collaboration goes well, you could be working with that business for years and years and years. That particular group of people who've come together for that initiative could be cleaning the community for years and years and years, right? So you're talking about a long-term initiative. What can also be birthed out of this is you can become an example to other communities about how to do similar work, right? So if this is happening in West Baltimore, and word gets out about this one community who's taking it upon themselves, we are going to do what we got to do to make our community safer, to make our community great, to make our community cleaner. Someone in West Baltimore gets, did I say West Baltimore? East Baltimore, whichever the other Baltimore was, opposite from what I said first, because I can't remember. But a community on the opposite end of Baltimore hears about this, gets inspired, and then comes and asks you, your organization or your initiative, to come and teach them or to coach them or mentor them in starting their own particular initiative, right? So it increases your network across the long term. And it may help to create unique solutions for problems, right? My mom used to tell us that two heads are better than one, right? And in a multitude of counselors, we can all be wise, right? And so when we put our heads together, we can come up with unique solutions that I may not have been able to think of on my own, or my team. I may be part of an organization where we have a team and we have brainstormed, and this is what we could come up with, but we now join another team, and now we're getting more solutions or unique solutions that fit into the community that we serve, right? There's no point offering a solution to a problem that will not fit or will not work for the community that we're serving. Each community we serve is unique. The problems may seem like it's the same everywhere, but the solution has to be unique. I do work in Jamaica in really poverty, in areas of high poverty, right? And so I've worked in Brooklyn, New York, in areas of high poverty. So the poverty exists for both communities. The solutions that I use when I work in Brooklyn, New York, it's different than the solutions I use when I'm working in Jamaica, because the communities are different. They are not the same. The problem may be the same, but the solution, the what is the word I'm trying to, the nuances of their particular problem is going to be different. So it's not a one size fits all situation at all when it comes to problem solving. It has to be unique and it has to be custom for the community that you're serving. All right, so what are some potential partners and collaborators? And I want you to make a list. As I'm talking, through this particular presentation, and feel free to put any potential partner and collaborators I may have missed in the chat. But I want you to start to make a list while we are together until 12:30, right? Until the time that we end. Start to make a list of what are some of the potential partners and collaborators that already exist within your network, and try to really think of relationships that are unique, relationships that are untapped, relationships that you may have, but you can kind of take it up a notch based on what you're learning today, right? So I want you to start making that list. And if you have some unique partnerships or collaborations that you want to share in the chat, please do feel free to share in the chat. And when we take a moment to look at the chat, we'll share some of these with everyone else who's on today. All right, so I always want to start with your board of directors. The board of directors is the heartbeat of your organization. If you do not have a board that is functioning well, that understands this role, that is committed to fundraising, that is committed to fundraising, and fundraising is going out and finding supporters for the organization that are not necessarily about money. If you don't have a board of directors that's educated about their fiduciary responsibilities, you will not have a thriving and sustainable organization. So your first collaborators off the top of the bat, if you take nothing else out of this training, your board of directors need to be your first collaborators. This starts at home. Charity starts at home, and so does collaboration. You cannot expect to have thriving partnerships, thriving collaborations with others outside if inside that's not happening. It starts inside the organization. So your board of directors are the nonprofits. We don't have to compete. My thing for this year is collaboration over competition. You compliment me, I'm not gonna compete with you, right? Because I don't know everything, I can't do everything. But with the right collaboration, with the right partnership, someone can come with the skills and the expertise and the knowledge to complement what I have. I complement what they have, and we now have a healthy relationship, right? So other nonprofits absolutely can not just be collaborators, but can also be partners. Local businesses, are you taking advantage of building relationships with local businesses, especially small businesses? Are you taking advantage of that? Because I'll tell you, it's a win-win for organizations and small businesses, right? So in the area or areas that you serve, that your nonprofit serves, how many local businesses do you have a relationship with? Do you have a relationship with any? And what is that relationship? If you want to put that in the chat, do you have a relationship with any local business, even if it's just one? And what is that relationship? What does that relationship look like? Your local government, you can't forget the people that you have voted or not voted, but the people who are in power that you got to hold accountable. Local government may also have programs. At times they may have funding, but it's important to be on the up and up of what type of initiative, what direction is the mayor's office going in, is the governor's office going in, the state's attorney's office, etc. It's important to know and understand those aspects of your local government, and are there opportunities for collaborations? There may not be many opportunities to partner, but definitely collaborations, and they may be able to help open doors for you or connect you to other potential collaborators and partners. So local governments, definitely. Churches and other community organizations, another untapped resource in communities. And other community organizations could be initiatives that are not necessarily a nonprofit, right? Because not all community organizations are nonprofits. You have some that are functioning and they're initiative or they're a social enterprise. They're not necessarily a 501c3, right? So are you tapping into other types of community organizations and churches? PTAs. Are you connected, depending on what the mission of your organization is? Are you connected to the school in your community and the PTA? Right? Or do you have a relationship? Do you have a collaborative relationship with them or a partnership with them? Volunteers and other supporters, absolutely. Right, so if you have a volunteer program and you recruit volunteers, the goal should be that you're turning these volunteers into partners and collaborators. They're not just folks who come and give their time, but they're folks who there's a reciprocity to the relationship, right? They're coming and giving their time, but what are these volunteers and other supporters, what are they getting? Besides a tax receipt or a thank you, are they getting new learning opportunities? Are they getting a chance to expand their network? Are they getting an opportunity to learn new skills, right? What are volunteers and other supporters getting out of their experience with you? All right, so before we go to best practices, I see there's a couple things in the chat. Here.
I don't see anything in the chat yet.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna keep going. So best practices, there are actually some best practices that exist when it comes to collaboration and partnership. And this is something that I work with when I have my one-on-one clients, is talking about who are you partnering with and who are you collaborating with. You should not be partnering and collaborating with everybody. Absolutely not. You have an ideal partner and ideal collaborator. In the previous session that I did around building out your team, and the idea of the thought process that goes into identifying your ideal team member, the same process should go into identifying who is your ideal partner or collaborator. And that's going to mean you sitting down with your board or with your staff or executive team and kind of drawing a picture. What are the characteristics? Where do they exist? What is their commitment to the community? Where is their heart? What are they passionate about? Right? What are they willing to do to support the work that we're doing? Where do we find them? Right? So I want to start off this section by making it absolutely clear that as a nonprofit, everyone is not your partner and you should not be collaborating with everyone. Right? And really taking the partnership and the collaborative process as serious as any other business decision that you make within a nonprofit, because nonprofits are a business. What business are you in? You're in the business of doing good, and doing good is very expensive. And I'm sure you can agree, doing good costs a lot of money, right? And so it's important that you approach partnerships and collaborations with your business hat on, as well as your I want to partner collaboration, people feeling good, shaking hands, smiling hat, right? The touchy-feely hat needs to be on along with the business hat. You got to make business decisions around who you partner and collaborate with. And here's why, right? One, the wrong collaboration or partnership could really ruin your reputation, could put a chip in your integrity, and can be a PR nightmare, right? So really being careful to do the research and invest the time in making sure that this is the right partnership or collaboration for you. So what are some best practices? First, how do you select if the partnership or the collaboration is the right one for you? Are you compatible? Right? So these are 5 things that you need to check off before you even extend an invitation or acceptance of an invitation when it comes to partnership and collaboration. Are you compatible? Look at their team, what their team is bringing to the table, because remember, we talk about complementing, right? So do they complement your team? Does their mission complement, or is it compatible with your organization? Just because you both are on the streets feeding the homeless or have a youth mentoring program does not mean that you are compatible. It does not mean that. So make sure you do the work to really investigate, what are the values that this organization brings to the table? How do they manage your team? How do they manage conflict, right? The areas of the community that they serve, is it similar to yours? Is it different than yours, right? Compatibility is important. Your mission, vision, and values should be aligned. It doesn't mean that it's the exact same mission, vision, and values, but it needs to be aligned. An example, you both feed or you both serve the homeless community. You serve young people who are homeless. And yes, it happens from children to young adults. So you may serve young people who are homeless from elementary all the way through college. And homeless really means you have no permanent home. So there are families who are sofa surfing. When I first came to the US from Jamaica, for the first 5 years that I was here, I came here when I was almost 5. And for the first 5 years that we were here, we were homeless. We went from one family member's house to the other. And when the landlord would find out that that family member had taken in my mom, plus 5 children, because that's what the number she had for the first 5 years I was here, they would threaten to evict my family member and we would have to move on to someone else's house. So the other day, I actually did a count and we moved about 7 times in 5 years, with coming to a brand new country, right? That meant schools got changed, right? So I was still going to school. And when I was in that particular school, we were using my family member's address, but we had no permanent home. So your organization may serve families specifically who are in that situation. So they may not be living out of their car or on the street, right? They could be living in that particular situation, or your organization could serve college students, young people who are over the age of 18, which may be 18 or 25, who might be living on the street. But that's your particular population you serve. Your mission, your vision, and values are around that. You may have another organization in the community who also serve the homeless, but they serve homeless adults who are solely living on the streets or who are in and out of shelters, right? So your mission, vision, and values are actually aligned. How are they aligned? Because together you are serving homeless families, and you're serving them from children all the way through adulthood. That's one. And you have a commonality of serving the homeless, right? So your mission, vision, and values may not be exactly the same word for word, but they are aligned. So that would make this particular organization who's approaching you or who you would like to approach, that will be a check off. Like, okay, yes, our mission, vision, and values are aligned. Is a relationship reciprocal? Let me tell you, this has to be one of the most contentious parts of partnerships and collaborations. And in a little bit, we're going to talk about an agreement and what needs to be in writing between the two organizations or the two entities. It has to be organization between the two entities before you even set your mind to tiptoe into a collaboration or a partnership. There is nothing wrong with ensuring that the relationship is reciprocal. Reciprocity is important. It's important for sustainability, right? What does that look like? That means that if I'm giving X, I would like to get something in return, right? So let's look at the two homeless organizations examples I just gave. One is serving children and essentially families, so children up to the age of 25. And if they're part of a family, they'll serve the family too. And then you have the other organization who's really just adults, and it's specifically adults who may be living on the street or in and out of shelters. Back to the first organization, they may serve families that don't have a permanent home. They're kind of sofa surfing, or they may live in transitional housing, but they really don't have a permanent home, right? So you have these two organizations, they're compatible, their mission and visions are aligned. How can you ensure that a relationship is reciprocal? It can be as simple as how the tasks, when you kind of write out the tasks or what needs to be done, or the amount of money that's going to take. Let's focus on tasks, because money we can talk about when we get to is it equal. So reciprocal meaning when you have 15 tasks that need to be done, and you have both teams at the table, right? Your team may have a strength in administration and organizing the community. My team may have a strength in creating and doing budgets and really being able to fundraise. Okay, we'll say budgets and being able to fundraise, right? Well, because my brain can't think of something else. So reciprocity with me, in exchange for my team leading the activities that are around community engagement and those relationships in the community, your team is going to take on the lead on fundraising, creating a budget, and making sure that we are in line with that, right? So your organization may even have an accountant. My organization can't afford it. But my organization has someone who is an amazing community organizer, and we have realized that being able to organize the community around a particular event or even a particular initiative is going to be really important to this project moving forward. And so in reciprocity, we will lend our support with our accountant. You will lend your support with this community organizer, and we have reciprocity, right? You are getting something in exchange for what you're giving. Relationships that do not have reciprocity don't normally fare very well. Why? Because one entity will always feel like they're giving more than they're receiving. Reciprocity, and is a relationship equal, does not mean that you both are giving the same, that 100% you're both giving looks the same, right? Because my 100% may look very different than your 100%, because we're at different places as an organization. But am I giving 100% of what I can give? That's what's important. I might be able to give a bit more when it comes to money, right? So our organization may have more funds. Your organization has more manpower. Your manpower equates to something. It equates to a dollar figure that I don't have to pay or gets knocked off my budget. Why? Because you can provide the manpower and I can provide the money, right? So it's important to ensure that the relationships that you are building, they are reciprocal. And now we're going to talk about being equal. When I was growing up in a religious home, they talked about being unequally yoked. Normally it was around marriage. And unequally yoked, we know is subjective, right? Depending on whatever you define. If you're religious, of the religious persuasion, you may have your own beliefs around that. The same principle can apply for business, being unequally yoked. That means that you are partnering with someone who's not going in the same direction as you, who is not equally as vested and has as much to lose in this partnership as you, right? Or in this collaboration. The risks should be equal. The wins should be equal. Once again, we're not talking about equality in the sense of, cutting down the bill in half and you're getting half and I'm getting half. No, what it means is that when we look at this relationship, based on what we've worked out, do we feel like we're both getting a fair shake? Do we feel like what we have to bring to the table, right? That we both bring enough to the table to make this work. Our 100% that we're putting together will make this work. One of the biggest issues when it comes to partners, mostly partnerships and sometimes collaboration, is the money factor, right? That you may have an organization who's coming to the table, or not even if it's money, but they may not have existed as long. So they're a very immature organization, and this immature meaning in years, not immature meaning in skills and talents, but they're immature meaning in years, and the reach they have is very small. You may be a larger organization. You've been around for a while. You have a following of 1 million. They have a following of 500. And they may have approached you to say, look, I know you've been around for a while. Here's our proposal on what we think will be an amazing partnership or collaboration, however they approach you. We want to sit and talk about this. It is absolutely okay to sit at the table and ask, what do you bring to the table as a smaller organization? Because just because you're a larger organization, or an organization may have more manpower or may have more money, does not mean that you have to agree to, or does that mean that you have to carry more of the load, right? So you sit down and you have a conversation, what are you bringing to the table? And even though they may be a smaller organization with 500 followers, they may have impacts and outcomes that blow your mind. They may have a network or access to people that even though you're a large organization with 1 million folks following you, you don't. That's why it's important to come to the table and have a conversation and bring up What are you bringing to the table? What am I getting out of this? And the other party doing the same. Or coming to the table with what, this is what we want to get out of this partnership or this collaboration. You got to start with honesty and transparency when it comes to these conversations. And if you don't have much to bring, say, look, we don't have much to bring. Here's what we have. Here's where we're looking to go. Here's what we're hoping to learn from you. So that everyone in this relationship, everyone in this conversation, and it's a relationship because you're building one, because you may not have a collaboration or a partnership the first go round, but you can probably find other ways that you can do things together to begin to build that relationship of trust, right? So relationship, equal. And then list out the pros and cons. So if you have organizations that are approaching you, or businesses or entities approaching you about partnering, they should be sending you a proposal, right? That kind of outlines what the initiative of the project is, what they're asking, what they want from you, what the outcomes are, who are they serving. List the pros and cons. What would be the pros and cons of saying yes? What would be the pros and cons of saying no? And the first four things that we talked about on this chart: compatibility, aligned mission, vision, and values, reciprocal relationship, equal relationship, needs to be a part of that pros and cons list that you're making. You may have your eyes set on collaborating or partnering with some organizations or some businesses. Do the pros and cons on your end, because that will help you to build a better, or to create, actually not build, I seem to love that word build, but create a more effective and a stronger proposal for these organizations. Does all this make sense? Just in the comments, if it does, just say yes for me. In the chat, is all this making sense? Agree, disagree?
Yes.
Okay.
Got some agreed.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. So any questions about making the selection? If you have any questions about making the selection, just put it in the Q&A and we will get to it. All right. So you've made a selection. So the two entities have sat down, or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, whomever they may be. You've sat down. You've had many brunches, you've had many meetings, you've had many heated conversations, you've gone back and forth via email, and you have finally decided that, yes, there is a match. I said yes to the partnership. I said yes to the collaboration, and now it's time to formalize that. Do not, I repeat, do not ever move forward with a partnership or collaboration without having these 3 items to execute it in place. These are very, very important to the successful execution of a collaboration or partnership. It does not mean that things are going to be easy. It does not mean that the first time around that it will be seamless, but it gives everyone clarity in who's doing what and what needs to be done. So first is a work plan. A work plan is a written plan. It is not something you send back and forth in email. It's a written plan that all parties agree to. And this is where you streamline the project. You write out the goals, objectives, tasks, and the team members that are responsible for each task. You also can put resources. What resources will you need to have available in order to make this partnership or collaboration possible? And who's coming to the table? Who's providing those resources? Is it the folks who are part of this partnership or collaboration? Or will you both be looking in your networks and you've identified folks that each party's or part entity will secure in order to bring those folks into this particular project, right? So goals, objectives, tasks, who's responsible for those tasks? What are those tasks do? And what resources will you need to have in place? Will you need to find, or that you already have? Right? So have in place mean for the future. At some point during this work plan, 6 months from now, we're going to need to have this particular resource in place. You have it now, meaning that the entities that are coming to the table have this resource readily available right now. So right now, if you needed a CPA to go over our budget, we have one on our staff, we can hand it over to them, right? And then which ones will you need to find? And those are more in the immediate future, right? Which resources are the entities that are part of this partnership or collaboration? That's probably going to take you a little more uphill climb or a little more work in order to find. And whose responsibility is it? Right? So a work plan. That's the first one that's created. Everyone that is going to be part of the particular partnership or collaboration needs to have input, and the work plan needs to be something that everyone agrees to. And there's nothing wrong with getting folks to sign it, right? To getting signatures from the representative, right? You don't have to get signatures from everybody on the team, but the decision makers, the people who are going to be responsible, who are responsible on behalf of the entity, the organization, or the business. Get signatures, everyone's signature on it, so that say, look, we all agree to this. You can edit the work plan. The work plan should be a fluid document. It is not something that you just create at the beginning and then you follow it, and it's not open for flexibility, moving dates, because sometimes, and you all know this, sometimes you have a great idea and you've talked it through with your team. You think you've thought of everything that could happen. You've thought of all the angles, but as you begin to implement it, you realize that there are certain things that you didn't even think of, and you didn't realize it until you started, one, or something happens in life like COVID, right? So something happens in life and the team has to go back to that work plan and make adjustments accordingly. So the work plan needs to be a fluid document. You need to have, because it's a map, it's a guide, but know that you can always, what does the when you use a navigation, is it reroute? When you go off the direction or off the path, the navigation system is telling you to go on. I think it says rerouting, right? So it's okay to reroute, right? The work plan is your navigation system, but things are going to happen in life. Things are going to happen with the team. You may have a team member who leaves the organization. You may realize that a particular task is going to take longer than expected because it's a long time getting responses. Just reroute, recalibrate, reroute, and work that into your work plan. So if you want this initiative to launch in a year from now, you need to be given wiggle room in that. Right? As you work backward and you set your deadline, give wiggle room. I normally give at least 5 to 6 working days wiggle room, because stuff happens. Somebody goes on vacation and takes 2 weeks to answer their emails for you to get an answer to move forward with a particular part of the agreement, right? Or a particular task. Give yourself some wiggle room in there. Then you have a memorandum of understanding. Now, in the nonprofit sector, aside from if you are contracting a caterer or contracting a particular service, most of the time, the best practice is to use a memorandum of understanding, or MOU, as you may know it, to establish the relationship between the parties. An MOU does not have to be legally binding. That's one of the big differences between a contract and an MOU. And MOU can be, so in the MOU, you can have verbiage that makes the agreement legally binding, and that's normally verbiage that talks about which state laws will be that the MOU, the relationship falls under, and that what will happen if dissolved, and if you need to go to court, etc. But MOUs don't have to have that, and it's really a good faith document that both parties are sitting down and saying in good faith that we are going to commit to this particular initiative. The MOU should have an escape clause. They all should have an escape clause. So if we decide halfway through this, that we thought this was going to be a great partnership or collaboration, but it isn't, and we want to dissolve it, there should be a process for that. Or COVID happens, right? And the MOU and the work plan is not out the window. You got to come back to the table. You can do an addendum to the MOU. So in the nonprofit sector, MOUs are mostly used for agreements between the nonprofit and other nonprofits or the community agencies. And normally contracts are normally around, if you are contracting a specific professional service, a caterer, someone who's providing chairs and tables for a particular event. If you're renting a building, so with your landlord, right? Those are normally contract relationships between other organizations and community agencies, even government agencies. You see an MOU, right? And they may have legally enforceable expectations in there, but a lot of times it doesn't have to. All right, so you have your work plan. So you've created that. Then you've created an MOU, which is, okay, now we're ready to start working. We have our work plan, the MOU, and I'm going to show you an example of an MOU and a work plan in a few minutes. The MOU should capture some information from that work plan, specifically around outcomes, due dates, and what are the deliverables, right? The scope of work. The MOU should have the scope of work and who's responsible for what. Summarizing, because you have a work plan, and you can certainly attach the work plan that's been signed to the MOU as another kind of document to support what's in the MOU. And then debrief. Even if you decide that you want to dissolve the collaboration or the partnership before the completion of the initiative, you should still do a debrief, right? Because when you look at the experiences that you have in doing nonprofit work, and once again, if you really look at it as a business, you don't have losses, you have lessons, right? And so this debrief process is really important for helping both entities, or however many entities that are in this particular relationship, to fully understand what happened, what went well, what didn't go well, and what improvements can you make for next time. So your team can walk away with, the next time that we enter into a collaboration or a partnership, here's what we're definitely not going to do. Or here's what we need to make sure we include in the next MOU or the next work plan. That process is really important. Exit interviews for staff, and I know this is a whole separate thing, but exit interviews for staff and volunteers, especially volunteers who've been with you for a long time, even if the parting is amicable, you should really do an exit interview to talk about their experiences, why they're leaving, even if it's beyond your control. But that information is really important for growing the organization, right? So when you have a MOU or you have a project you're working on and it doesn't go well, it's a lesson. It's not a loss. It's a lesson. What have you learned from this lesson that will ensure that the next time you have a partnership or a collaboration, that you make wiser decisions, or more educated decisions, or better decisions about who you partner with? Or it may be just what you had in the work plan, the MOU. It may even be timing, right? So sometimes initiatives slow down or dissolve, not because it was the wrong partner or because things didn't go necessarily right, but sometimes the timing is just off. It was just the wrong time for both organizations to take on this particular initiative, and you table it and you wait for the right time, right? So look at the debriefing process as a way to figure out what are the lessons, what are the takeaways that we are getting or we've received from this particular initiative, from this particular relationship that we had. All right, so this is a sample of a work plan. There are lots of templates online, but our Green Elephant, which at the end you'll see information about Green Elephant, that's for Grow Charity. That's a free portal platform that you have access to if you register. And we are going to have templates. We are uploading templates that can help BIPOC leaders and BIPOC-led organizations kind of be able to do work more efficiently. The idea is to work smarter, not harder, right? And so it won't be this exact template, but there'll be a work plan template that you can just download and it will be editable for you to use. But this is similar to what a work plan template should look like. The action or the task. When is this task supposed to be complete, or over what time? It may not just be a specific date. You may break down this one task into 5 or 6 different deadlines, right? What are you expecting to get out of this? What should be accomplished? When this task is done, what should be accomplished? This really is more if you are, this really speaks to like grant, or if you need to provide this information for a grant, or if you are being part of an evaluation process, I would replace this with resources needed if you do not need to have this, or you can just add a column, right? So this would be what are the resources that you need in order for this action step to be completed, and then who's responsible for it, and then any comments. And the comments, really utilize comment sections, because the comments can be where you jot down notes, or where the person who is working on this task can jot down notes, right? Because you can add comments in Google Drive, you can add comments in lots of places where you might be able to track your comments. So really utilize a comment section to drop down ideas or little reminders or things that may trigger your mind. Trigger your brain. So very simple work plan. It doesn't have to be complicated. Very simple. All the entities and all the parties go over it to make sure everything is covered. I would suggest having a signature line where everyone's like, okay, yep, understood, agreed. But knowing that you can, this is fluid. You can go in and you can make edits as needed and track those edits, right? So the first action step that you have here, you would not delete it. You would just go below, put a 2 or put a note to say updated action step or updated task and the date, and then you type what the updated task is. Don't delete your history. Leave everything, because you want to be, everyone needs to be able to go back and say, okay, when we first started this is what we said we we're going to do. We're now 6 months down the road. We've made X amount of edits. Is there some challenge with this task, right? So very simple document that can be created to help to create a work plan for you. There's also lots of platforms, like before we got on, Kate and I were talking about Airtable and Asana and just some other options that are available for doing this using an app or doing it virtually versus pen and pencil, or even doing it in Google Drive or Excel. But once again, what are the needs of your team? How do your team communicate? What is the easiest way for them to communicate, right? And Google Drive and Excel have ways for you to track changes and stuff like that as well. So you can certainly utilize, a platform like Google Drive or Excel if, another platform is just not feasible or affordable for your organization. I see some stuff in the chat, so let me see. Yes, off the road pivoting. Yes. Green elephant. Monique, I see that question mark. I'll get to that when we are closer to the end. So yes, thanks, Robert, Monique, for helping me with those words. Yes, off-road or pivoting. Pivot. One of the big words that came out of COVID as well, right, is our ability to pivot. All right, a memorandum of agreement or memorandum of understanding. Same thing. Here's a sample, and I hope you can kind of still see between with this big old draft. I was trying to look for one because I didn't want to screenshot one that I have. So I was trying to look for one that was online that was actually a JPEG I could insert, because sometimes when you screenshot, it gets a little blurry. But this had pretty much the part of an MOU. So who, what's the date it was made on? It's between who and who. And normally when you put the between, you put the name. If it's an organization, you put the name of the organization and you put their address. And you get to do that for each organization or each entity or each person. If it's people that are entering into an MOU, not organizations, you put the person's name and address. But if it's organization's name and the address is binding. And then the terms. And the terms, you can exchange the word term for scope of work. It goes in objectives, you can, for scope of work. So term is how long is this agreement going to be in place? So if you're working on a project that's 2 years, right, you would say when it starts, this is the time of it. The day that the agreement is made on is not necessarily the date that the agreement starts, right? So this is the section where you would put what the time frame will be for the agreement to start and end. And then at the bottom or somewhere in here, you would then have, if you want to terminate early, what's the process for that? You need a 60-day window, 45-day window, either party can terminate, whatever the case may be. If there are costs that are associated with this particular MOU, then that needs to be also outlined in the termination section. So if you're going to terminate this agreement early, and there are costs that still exist, or there are costs that have not yet been paid, that have that you've used a service, how is that going to be settled? Or if terminating the agreement will incur costs, right? So let's say, for example, this is an agreement between 3 organizations who want to together put on a gala, a fundraising gala, 2 years from now, right? So you have this MOU, because yes, even for that, you have this MOU in place for this particular gala that you're gonna put on together. You have secured a space, you've got a caterer, and they, in their contracts, they have termination, what the termination process is if you want to cancel. And there's a cost associated. Now the 3 of you have decided, look, we're not gonna make a run of this, but to cancel the caterer, it's $500. How is that going to be paid? Is that going to be split evenly? Is it going to be 50% the entity that wants to cancel or withdraw from the agreement, right? So you should outline all that in that particular section. And then what are the obligations? Scope of work, right? So obligations and goals and objectives really are just what are your outcomes? What are you hoping to get out of this particular initiative, event, or whatever that you're trying to do, and then your scope of work, right? What are you, what are going to be the tasks? And you can broad, right? So your tasks don't have to be make phone calls 5 times a day. No, we're talking about broad, really summarize and broaden what the task areas are. The obligations of each party. Is there a financial obligation? Is there an obligation to provide the space? Are we going to be using your staff to do a particular be a part of? I'm trying to think of that event example. So are your staff going to be the ones who are helping to serve the food, because I would help save costs on the caterer who's just going to set up a buffet style, right, and does not provide servers, right? So really, what are the obligations? And it's really good to be very specific and clear here. If there's a confidentiality clause needed, then not all MOUs need them, then you would include that information. The relationship of the parties doesn't necessarily have to be included. Some nonprofits may do this as a way of just being transparent, or any conflict of interest that may exist in this particular agreement may also be placed there. And then this is where you would put your legal, I don't want to call it mumbo jumbo, but the legal stuff. It's binding. What state is it binding in? And full power, authority, legal rights, execute, all those nice fancy words. And the template that will be in Green Elephant will have a more updated and relevant MOU that you can download and use that would be more appropriate. I found this one, which is the closest one I found to, like, just the parts that are normally part of an MOU that a nonprofit may use, but the one that you will download will be more relevant for you. All right, Q&A. Are there any questions? So yes, I see Rob has a question. Will slides be available after the webinar? Yes. So the slides and the video will be available after the webinar. Kiera will speak about that as we end out. Before we exit, she will speak about that. So yes, it will be available after the webinar.
So yes, the slideshow will be available on the bcyfund.org website shortly after the presentation. We're giving them a couple of days to post it onto the website, but also the recording will be available as well. So if you want to share with anyone else on your team, please send them to the website and the YouTube channel.
Any other questions or comments about anything that I presented on today? Anything you're not clear on, anything specific to your organization that you may want to ask? We have a few minutes left. I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have about the presentation or about something that may be specific to your organization in regards to partnerships and collaborations. Good question. How best do you recommend identifying volunteer staff on organizations and time commitments? Really, really great question. Can you do me a favor, because I don't want to mispronounce your first name? Would you mind just phonetically putting it in the chat for me? Because I want to make sure that I pronounce your name appropriately. So Olanreli, am I pronouncing it right? I'm Jamaican, so you know sometimes we can be Olanreli. Am I pronouncing it correctly? I hope so. Yeah. Oh, Lay. Okay. Oh, Olanreli. Okay, got it. Olanreli. Yeah, Olanreli. All right, Olanreli. Amazing question. So if you have an organization that is volunteer run, or staff run organizations, how do you best recommend identifying volunteer or staff run organizations and time commitments? Are you talking about identifying volunteers and staff with organization? Or are you talking about finding organizations that are volunteer or staff run? So is this a question about looking for volunteers, or is it a question about finding organizations? I totally misread the question first. I thought the question was, if you have a volunteer on a staff on organizations, kind of how do you the management of the company. There's a bottleneck between finding organizations that are run by staff versus run by volunteers. So you are looking, I'm still not clear on the question. Are you looking to volunteer somewhere on a nonprofit, or you're a part of a nonprofit? Like I'm still. Olanreli, I'm still unclear on the question.
Would it be easier to take them off mute?
Yes. Okay, got you. So yes, please take off mute. I got the question now, but it'll be good to have make sure that I'm understanding the last comment correctly.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
Yeah, so we're trying to find a good metric for how to partner with other organizations. We ourselves are volunteer run, but when we are trying to write up that MOU, we don't want overcommitment. We want to make sure that we're taking our time and developing a good relationship. So my question is really, how do you recommend examining that issue of time commitment, since an organization with staff can perhaps develop a more fulfilling partnership than one with volunteers?
Okay, got you. So and when you say volunteers, are you talking about the board, or you're just talking about volunteers generally?
I would say the board principally, but it's great to develop that web of help.
Okay. For your board, do you have job descriptions for each board member position along with the time the time commitment for each position?
We are building that out now, but
Okay.
I have not found that some of the other organizations that we are talking with really do.
Mhm. So I think that would be, so for you, organizations that have boards, organizations that have a process for ensuring for board members clearly knowing what the time commitment is going to be one of the factors that help you determine if it's a good partnership. So for example, if you want to partner with an organization, my organization, this is just for example, and it's a project that's going to take 200 hours, and you're 100% volunteer run, and I may be 100% volunteer run, right? And you said, our board members, they understand our mission and they're committed to committing X amount of time towards this project. What are the commitments? What does a commitment look like for your board members, or what are your board members amount of time they're required? Because you can have required time for your board members. A yes or a no, or how much time a board member for that particular organization is willing to commit will be a factor for you to decide if you're going to move forward with them or not. And when you're volunteer run, time becomes even more precious, as you've noted, because if it's an organization that has employees, that can be a part of their workday, right? There's going to be a commitment of time there that may not necessarily exist. So one would be that. Two, it would be really looking for organizations that have a board culture that where commitment and really being engaged with the board is a priority or is a non-negotiable. And there are organizations that exist like that. It's just going to take time to connect. Have you heard of the Associated Black Charities Board Pipeline Leadership Program?
Yes, we have. It's really a great program.
Okay, so they have the meet and greet where individuals who are looking to be on nonprofits, if you have a volunteer-led nonprofit, you can go to this meet and greet and you meet folks who are looking for nonprofits to be on, and you can find board members. But the other thing that also comes there is other nonprofits and other organizations that you can also network with. And Associated Black Charities have done all the work for you. They've gotten everyone into the space. They've gotten organizations and they've gotten potential board members, right? So once again, when you're attending an event, not once again, because I didn't say it before, when you attend an event, especially a networking event, what are you looking to get out of it? So you may be looking for one or two board members, but the main reason why you attend may be you want to connect with some of these other organizations or contacting Associated Black Charities. And I'm just using that as an example to see the organizations that may be attending. So ahead of time, maybe you can reach out, or maybe you can schedule your own separate kind of networking with them, or breakfast or lunch, or to get on a Zoom because you find that your mission is similar, right? So those are the only ways that I can think of when it comes to trying to figure out and what organizations one are out there, and then what are organizations using to kind of measure board engagement, or what are the expectations around board engagement for volunteer-led organizations. I hope all that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And being this really honest and transparent, the boards that I sit on, I appreciate that they say, this is our plan for the year. So I don't sit on boards who don't have a calendar set from the year before. So the boards I sit on, the 2022 calendar was done and the board approved it by November of 2021. Very few, unless you're canceling something, very few times something new is added. So I know for this board how much time I'm going to have to commit to something. If I'm on a particular committee, or if I'm the person who helps with the fundraising or the event planning, I already know how many months ahead of time what my year will look like. That's also very helpful for helping to manage board and having board members more engaged and really being upfront. This is what a typical year looks like for us. This is how much time goes into planning this fundraiser, or goes into that particular event, or go into running this program. and letting folks know ahead of time.
Right, Joe, just to add, Mano also offers some board development and board resources. So if anyone has opportunity to reach out to the Maryland Association of Nonprofit Organizations, they have a toolkit as well.
Yes, Mano is another great resource as well.
So Rob has a question in the chat. Did you go over that yet?
No, so there are two nonprofits that are trying to solve the same problem in the same geographic area. Oh boy. But neither have sufficient resources to solve the problem fully. How can they collaborate and not view themselves as competitors? Oh my goodness, my friend Rob, this is a mindset shift that needs to happen in the nonprofit community, period. And this is something I've worked in Brooklyn, New York. I've worked in Baltimore, Maryland. I've worked in Baltimore County. I've worked internationally with nonprofits, and it's a mindset issue, right? And really getting to have nonprofits look at themselves as collaborators or complement each other versus competitors. So one, the easy answer to this is a mindset shift that's going to have to happen in the nonprofit sector. But the other answer to this is that may not be the nonprofit that you need to partner with, right? You may need to find other stakeholders in the community that may be interested or may have access to the resources that you may need. And that may be small businesses, that may be forming a work group that explores that particular problem, explores the resources that are available, where they're available, and how do you get them, right? So you may just start with that. We don't have all the resources, whether it's manpower, money, space, getting access to clients or folks who would take advantage of whatever we're offering. So form a work group from stakeholders, and the stakeholders can come from business owners to folks, church members, to if there's any colleges in the area, you get everyone together. Here's a problem. We need to explore this. We need a work group to explore this particular issue or resources and help us come up with where can we find the resources? How can we get access to the resources? And what do we need to do to be in that place to be resourceful enough to help to address this problem? I don't think that any nonprofit can, and here to tell me if you disagree, I don't think that in any of our lifetimes, we can solve a problem, especially the social issues that exist. From poverty to crime, to access to healthcare, to equity, to racial justice. I think those are problems that consistently will exist in humanity. And I really think the perspective of a nonprofit, I'm here in my corner of the world and I am looking for ways to ease, right? To ease or to help folks to climb out of or break generational, whether it's poverty or lack of education. I don't like to use the word generational curses, but for lack of a better word. So I think really the idea around backing off from, we may not be able to solve this at the moment with what we have, but with what we have or what we can get, how can we begin to chip away at this? I hope that makes sense, Rob, because a lot of times it's really just starting where you are. And so while you are looking to start a work group or while you're assessing the resources that you have, what can you do, right? What can you do to kind of help to work at this particular issue, but take some pressure off yourself and off the board and off your organization in that we have to solve this. There's no obligation to solve anything. But you can make life living, you can make quality of life, you can help improve quality of life. You can help improve access to fresh, green food. You can improve access to education, access to quality and equitable and fair healthcare, right? You can definitely ease some of that, but take that pressure. That's how you have to solve it. And I think what happens is when I've challenged clients to take that pressure of wanting to solve it, to really looking at where we are and how can we be a part of improving the quality of life, making somebody's today better than yesterday, they have found that the resources that they thought were limited were actually, for where they are, was what they need to start making those small steps forward.
I agree, Rachel. It's in a nonprofit sector, like, we do this because we're passionate about the work and about the people. I've never been one to understand nonprofit as being competitive, because in my mind, there's enough space and room, resources for everyone. And if the goal is to help people and orgs and others who need resources, it only makes us stronger by working together to create these alliances and to show up the best way that we can, because we don't have all the answers within our own orgs and our own selves. So it just makes sense to pair with others and be in partnership and in community. I mean, and since we're speaking about BCYF, BCYF is was founded on the principles of collaborations, partnership, the whole sense of I am because we are, and we are here together to support each other in this work, and collaborating so that we can help more people, or so we might not in our lifetime solve poverty. However, we are making the right steps to help, one child, one youth, one community member at a time, and that's powerful.
And that's really all that's required of us, right? Is to just make those steps. So I would certainly, like I said, look at where you are now and with the resources you have, what can you do? Secondly, look at starting a work group or an exploratory group of community stakeholders. And it may be, that organization may look at that as less threatening, quote unquote, because look, we're coming from a space of collaboration. How can we do this together so we can apply for more funding? Is it something we can do together to raise money, right? That particular perspective may be a way to kind of get in, or that's just not the organization that you need to be partnering or collaborating with, right? And as you begin to network and gather a group of community stakeholders, you might be surprised who people are connected to or who they can connect you to that would be more beneficial for what you're doing. That makes sense. So I know we had a question about Green Elephant. Green Elephant is an online platform that's provided by growcharity.com, at growcharity.com, sorry. Right now, it is free for our nonprofit community. On Green Elephant is where we have templates, we have presentations, we have resources, there's a newsletter, we have elder wisdom where some of our elders who've been in this work for a long time share their wisdom with the members of Green Elephant. Our newsletter is called The Herd, and the idea that elephants are our community animals, right? They take care of each other, but they always move as a community, they move as a herd. And so that's kind of the feel of the whole Green Elephant platform. So some of the templates from the presentations I've done, some of the templates I've talked about will be there for you to download in the next couple of weeks. We're uploading stuff, so give us like a couple of weeks between presentations to get all the information uploaded. But once you join, it's free. You will get the information about when templates are accessible. Then, as Kieta said, the BCYF, the YouTube, you'll have access to the recording, as well as you'll get access to this particular presentation, the slides as well on their platform. So you can download the slides or go through the slides again as a reminder. There's one-on-one sessions that are available with technical assistants who can help you with the grant application if you're going through this particular process. So right there, a lot of resources. If you have a question, both Kiet and I have no problem answering questions. If you have a question about the grant process, or if you just have a general question about the nonprofit work you're doing, and you need us to point you in the right direction somewhere, please do not hesitate to contact us. We are here to serve. We are here to help our community thrive. And we'll do that in whatever way that we can. All right, so Kieta has put the information in the chat, the email address that you can email if you have questions. And please, and Kieta, correct me if I'm wrong, please don't hesitate. If you have a question or you're stuck in a particular area with your nonprofit, still email that address because someone may be able to point you in the right direction, right? Don't be afraid to ask for help or ask questions. Right?
Exactly. If you have questions about your eligibility regarding the Grassroots Fund or any other questions about BCYF or even nonprofit management in general, we have about 8 TAs who are supporting the one-to-one process, and they're ready and they're available to help support you with this process.
Yes, at no cost to you. You can't beat that.
No cost.
No, $0. $0 is what's going to cost you. You can't beat that in the nonprofit sector. So thank you all so much for joining me today in this presentation. Thank you for being attentive and for being engaged, and wishing you all a wonderful week. And I hope the rest of this week is splendid for you. And I will see you next time.
Thank you. Have a great evening. Thanks, Monique.